Hey everyone, welcome to the Hormone Genius podcast. Teresa and I are very excited to interview Anna Herrera. She is an entrepreneur and the founder of Hormone University. She is also a personal care and beauty executive, an endo warrior, which I love that phrase, an endo warrior. Yeah, I love that. She suffered from stage 4 endometriosis for years and went through 5 surgeries, infertility, and surgical menopause. She has quite the story to share, and I definitely am excited for all of you guys to share how she took that pain and suffering and is doing something about it to serve other women. So Anna, will you share with us a little bit about you and then how you got to where you are currently with our listeners?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jamie and Teresa, for having me here. I'm very, very excited to join you and to speak to your audience about, my journey and what we're doing at Hormone University. So, yes, I was diagnosed with endometriosis at the age of 27, 28. I always suffered from very heavy periods and fibroids. So it was kind of like part of my daily life until the pain became pretty excruciating. And I ended up going actually to Spain, to my home country. I was working in London as an executive in the beauty industry and went back to Spain, and I called my doctor and I was one of the lucky ones that got diagnosed straight away through just looking at the ultrasound. He immediately knew that I had endometriosis. So that was the start of a very, very long path with this condition that is suffered by 10% of the adult female population. It's extremely high, and we still don't talk about it. And so very happy that you are opening the conversation. And so, I started going through first, surgery and treatments. And I was asked to, get the pill as well. And it was, just very, very, very hard. My dream was to have a family, and through stage 4 endometriosis, unfortunately, that just became a pretty impossible objective. So I did try IVF when I was married at the time, and unfortunately, it was just not possible. So 5 surgeries. The last one was 2 years ago. And that was when I just had a very, very strong pain. And I spent probably 50% of my time going through a lot of pain. And 2 years ago, I couldn't move. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stand up. And so the doctors immediately, I went to ER, and they just said, look, really sorry, we're going to have to perform. Most probably, we'll do whatever we can, but most probably there's going to be a full hysterectomy. I had my colon infiltrated as well. So colon resection, full hysterectomy. And, a woman goes through menopause throughout, premenopause, menopause throughout an average of 7 to 8 years. So when you go through surgical menopause, all of a sudden overnight, you're having hot flashes and all sorts of other ramifications. So I often say endometriosis is not just about that condition, but the consequences. In my case, that was infertility, that was excruciating premenstrual syndrome, and menopause. So that obstacle in my life led me to my biggest inspiration. I still kind of choke up when I think about it. And that was, I just, I immediately realized I am a lucky person. I'm very fortunate. I grew up with a wonderful family. I had, access to healthcare for free, by the way, in Spain and also in the UK. And, I just thought, wow, this is so unfair, what's happening here. If I had no idea about women's health, what happens to the majority of women that don't even have this access? So I immediately realized I had to do something about it. I called the Endometriosis Foundation of America. I met with the founder. I've been volunteering with them for the last 2.5 years. And I'm now chair of their advisory board on a volunteer basis. And then I thought, okay, I have to do something myself. So that was the seed that was planted to come up with the idea of an educational platform, which is Hormone University. And that was born in the middle of the pandemic last year.
Wow.
Back in May. So yeah, and
Wow.
that's where we are. And the mission of Hormone Universities to become the destination for education and for having women like you also come on board and spread the word and raise awareness about easily digestible information, not too scientific, because I think it's really important that from the moment that we have our first period until we go through menopause, that we understand what's going on with our health, with our hormonal health.
Absolutely. Anna, you know what I should have asked at the very beginning? Tell us what endometriosis is for people who aren't aware. And then if you don't mind too, walking through what stage is what, you're stage 4. So what's what stage 1, 2, 3?
Yeah. So yeah, it's endometriosis when basically the lining of the uterus can go into any part, can kind of implant itself into any part of your body. And I want to really highlight this because many people think it's just, implanted in the ovaries and that's what's causing the pain. But it's usually what it means is that you have a high tendency for inflammation and you have high estrogen. And so in my particular case, it was implanted in my colon. We have actually talked to women that have had endometriosis in their skin, in their lungs. I mean, crazy stuff. So this is what's basically endometriosis. Like I said, it's suffered by 10% of women. And actually, latest stat says that it's increasing because of many different factors, environmental factors, toxicity in our lives, plastics, and many other factors. So yeah, it's a huge issue. And in some countries, actually, now endometriosis is considered as almost like wouldn't say the word disability, but they would allow you to take time off work, for example. So, and I think that's a good progress because nobody talked about it before. So, yeah.
Yes. And what's the stage 1, 2, 3, and 4?
So, I'll be honest, I don't know the exact differences. I think that stage 4 is when you have that implantation in a different organ. And it's almost like, unfortunately, it's almost like the behavior is almost like cancer, right? It just implants itself in a different organ. And that is what is considered stage 4.
Yeah. And I often use that analogy. I don't use that word, I have to, because people hear that word and it's a scary word, right? But I often use that analogy because it is like cancer in the sense that you've got tissue or cells that are growing, kind of proliferating is the word, where they shouldn't. And it also helps in using that analogy to describe why it's so important to take care of the disease surgically. Because if I told you you had a cancerous tumor, it would make sense to someone that has to be surgically removed. But when you're talking about, endometriosis in women and why maybe you shouldn't use a medication or birth control to treat that disease, it's because it can't remove the cells or the tissue that's causing the problem. So I think that distinction is helpful. And it actually, when I was thinking about our interview today, Anna, I was thinking about some cases of endometriosis that I have seen throughout my 20 years of practice. And you mentioned on the skin, and I'll never forget, I had a patient that had endometriosis growing out their navel. And I remember it looked like endometriosis. It really did. It had a purplish look to it. And I think it's because she had previous surgeries and it had kind of like, I can't think of the word, but the cells replaced themselves in that area. And you mentioned the lungs. It's not, I mean, it's rare, but it's something called Catamanial Pneumothorax. When a woman has endometriosis in her lungs, which is actually in the diaphragm, it's not, it creates holes in the diaphragm, basically. And so you don't have, the diaphragm is what keeps our lungs inflated and allows it to then deflate. So these holes then, and during the period when the endometriosis is its most reactive, they can have a collapse of their lung. And we actually had a patient that had that and had to go to a very, very specialized surgeon who had treated thoracic endometriosis. So there is, and they found it in brain tissue as well. Obviously, those are the rarer situations. Most of the time it is in the pelvis, but I think, and this is why it's so important, and I know we'll talk about this more with your case, you have to have such a good surgeon, because if you miss it on the intestines, on the pelvic walls, on the colon, on the rectum, in unique places on the bladder, then you're not going to serve this woman well by just going in there and being like, well, we found it on your ovary and removed it and left like 75% of it hidden, which I know I have seen case after case where patients, I call it like getting a half treatment. They're getting some of it treated, but then they come out of surgery. They're like, well, we did our best. And now you have to take a bunch of suppressive medication still, because your pain's not going to go away unless you have 100% cure of disease. Just like your cancer doesn't go away if someone doesn't take out all of your cancer.
Absolutely. Wow. Those cases, I never heard about the brain. So that is something I've just made a note, because I want my team to look into this. And, thanks for sharing that. It's just so sad. It makes me really sad, actually, that so many women have to go through this. And I want to kind of take a step back and throw another message, which is, we should be heard. And when you go to the doctor, you have to advocate for yourself, because one of the main issues about endometriosis and many other conditions in women's health is that we're not being heard. There's this bias about, oh, you have heavy period, that's the way it should be, and that's normal. And actually it is not normal that you can't walk or you can't, stand up. And I will never forget when I was a partner at this company back in the UK, and had a, really demanding job. And I was bending down in pain whilst having to present to my 3 male counterparts. And I ended up sending a link about endometriosis to one of my colleagues. And I wanted them to understand, what I was going through, because, that's the thing, like we're made to believe, oh, are we exaggerating? Or, you don't want to look bad, or at least in my case, right? And that vulnerability is seen as a weakness sometimes. And so we just have to really, break with that taboo. And so I sent that link to him, and I never got a reply. And wow, lack of empathy. And it was actually made the front page of a major newspaper. So I thought, okay, this is my chance to let them know that this is a huge issue in women's health, but never got a reply. So opening up the conversation, very important, and advocating for ourselves, very, very important.
Totally. Anna, what I was thinking of as you were explaining the need for women to be heard, which is 100% true. I think sometimes, for the example that you gave with the male colleague, I think women too, because so many women are on suppressive medications, that their cycle seems maybe easy when it's not a true cycle at all. And so it's really covering up like a Band-Aid, potentially endometriosis, PCOS, that kind of thing. And like Teresa said at the beginning, like birth control isn't going to take away those endometrial cells. And so what I think is interesting is the relationship women have with their body. So when we're covering it up with birth control, whether we have a healthy cycle or not, we don't have that relationship or that intuition with our body for health, or likewise if something is disordered in a sense. And so as I was kind of working through that thought, I was thinking about how last night I was watching New Girl. Do you guys watch New Girl with Zooey Deschanel? She's like this really like spunky girl that has 3 roommates, male roommates, and it's like a really funny show. Our listeners, if you know New Girl, you know what I mean.
Oh, anyway, I'll add it to my list.
It's so funny. She's hilarious. She's like just really funny. Anywho, main point, they were talking about PMS last night in the episode I was watching, and she referred to her period as the red devil. That's what she said, in a way that made me think about how that is actually what women think about their period in general, even when it's not disordered. Mm-hmm. So then it got me thinking about how she was expressing her relationship with her own body. Like, it's this liability, it's disordered. Even if it isn't disordered, I don't like that there's this red devil, which is really just a period. And so all of that thought, can you believe, came from what you were just saying about being heard and then that colleague. So how do we, as endo warriors, which I love how you use that phrase, Anna, how do we encourage women to have a relationship with their body and to view their body as not disordered, and to get help when it is? What are your thoughts, and what have you learned on this journey of yours as you've been working with women in this regard?
Wow, I really love that question. And look, this is a collective support, right, between all of us. And I sometimes think, I wish I knew what I know now back then when I was like 20 something, or, you know, in my teens. And, you know, I come from a large family. I have 3 older brothers, right? And I remember when I had my first period, and it was kind of like oh, you know, she has, oh my God, like told at the table with everyone sitting there. And, and there was that kind of, you know, that generational thing, you know, our parents. And I really do think that that's an important factor, is how we are being taught from, you know, by our moms, by our fathers, right? How do you normalize that conversation at home? So it really starts there. And then at school, you know, what are teachers telling us? What are schools teaching? Are they doing this in a way that they can make not just the girls, but also boys, right, to respect and to be empathetic about what we go through? Because I think that what we have as women is so powerful, right? We have the power to create life, and that is just incredible. So we should be reframing that conversation and reframing the way that we communicate our women's health, actually, full stop. So, because it is health, and hormones regulate so many things, and it's so powerful in so many ways. So I think, yeah, there are many kind of points here that we just have to connect, and yeah, we all have to work towards that for sure.
Which, of course, that's, I assume, the goal of Hormone University. Yes. It's creating a foundation in conversation, in story, in education, which I love, because, and it's amazing how we kind of have come on the scene, I feel like, at the same time, the Hormone Genius, Hormone University, but this desire and passion in all of us to see that women are empowered to know their own bodies, to understand the unique feminine design of our bodies, to know that that you are made good from the beginning. Right. Which is, again, the idea that we shouldn't call our period the red devil. It's right. We were made good, this power, the central power we have in this thing in the menstrual cycle, and how much good that it does for our health. None of that is spoken about in school. It's always seems like it's either just talk about the hygiene of it, or it's talk about the risk mitigation of it. Right. Instead of seeing it as like something good, as a power. And, you know, so tell us, I guess, about Hormone University and what you're trying to do and give to the world. I love the fact that you're trying to reach, I think, 1 million women by 2023. What an awesome goal.
Awesome.
Yes, and it's a tough goal, but we're working hard towards it. Someone from my team is sitting here, and she's the one in charge of all the branding. And yeah, it's look, for me, it's personal, right? It's a personal goal. We are not monetizing at the moment, and believe me, there is so much work in the background. And that basically is the goal. So we want to, we have a lot of great plans. We want to reach out to schools. We want to really influence education from the start of this journey as a teenager, right? And also, as I said, not just for women, but for boys or for brothers or for dads or for husbands. And so that's really what we want to do. On another note, and also part of our mission and vision is we are launching very soon a certification program for brands, Hormone University seal of approval. So the reason why we're doing that is, I've been in the personal care industry for so long, and there is a lot of conversation about clean formulations and toxicity. And so that's, there are so many products out there that have endocrine disruptors. So we are creating this certification so that brands can come to us. We have a medical board, and they can basically send us the information on, what kind of formulations they're using, what ingredients are they using, and they can have that seal of approval after the board approves, right? After we go through all the information. So our goal also is not just to educate, but also to have all these brands take accountability for what they're putting out in the world. That we believe is extremely important. So yeah, that's really where we are, and that's the goal.
Anna, can you talk about the role of endocrine disruptors and xenoestrogens on the menstrual cycle, and why this is an important conversation to our listeners?
Really, really important conversation. And look, they can have such an effect in terms of inflammation and producing more estrogen in our bodies. And then we come to a point where we have a mix of things happening. One is we are highly stressed, right? This is our society at the moment. And actually, I was reading a report about what is happening in the US with women's health. And I looked at a study with other countries in Central Europe, in Northern Europe. There was also New Zealand, there was Canada. And more than 1/3 of women in the US skip needing medical care because of the cost. And I say this because, now linking back to your question about the importance of having a clean life, let's say, and being very, very careful about plastics and other environmental factors, is that we need to take care of ourselves, right? Because the healthcare system is very, very hard for many women with, low income. But going back to the point on what it does to your body is that inflammation that is the issue. And this, you become highly estrogenic, and then how do you detoxify that? How do you get rid of that? So that's where that, alongside the fact that we are highly stressed, high cortisol levels, which also produce inflammation. So all of these factors, not just one, right? It's a number of factors that have a huge, huge influence in things like PCOS, endometriosis, changes in your menstrual cycle. So a lot of ramifications there.
So what I'm hearing you say, Teresa, I'm just going to say one quick thing. There are things that we can do as women. So women, those of you who are listening, if you have endometriosis, if you don't, if your periods are painful, cramping, anything like that, that there are things that we can do at home. We can reduce plastics in our home. We can make sure that we're washing our fruits and vegetables very well, or buying organic. We can make sure that we're putting, our makeup isn't full of toxins, over the counter stuff. So maybe talk a little bit more about like, what are the top 3 ways that someone can start to reduce, estrogens in their home or endocrine disruptors so that they can reduce the inflammation in their body. If there's already inflammation anyway, but we're adding fuel to the fire by our lifestyle, what are ways that we can manage that at home?
And I'd love to just tag team to that question, because since we're talking about low income, like sometimes it can feel like if you go to a website and it's all about like clean living, that if I don't have the money, it's not accessible to me to buy the super fancy organic face cleaner or shampoo. So I know, since that seems to be a passion of yours, Anna, is there a way that we can reach clean living without it being super expensive? How do we manage that?
Good question.
Yes, absolutely. And that is a great, great point. It's just so unfair, right? How the industry works. So in order to get what actually comes from nature, we have to pay more.
Yeah.
So it's so ironic, right?
Yeah.
And, I again, huge passion of mine. My father was a great visionary when it came to having organic food at home and no fertilizers. But we were lucky. I grew up in the south of Spain, and it was just pretty normal to have beautiful tomatoes at home and things like that. So I think when it comes to doing things at home, so look, there are many, let's say, traditional ways of cleaning, right? Baking soda, vinegar, mix it with water. That's how you can clean in a very cheap way, and it's actually very effective, right? So that's one thing when it comes to cleaning. Old-fashioned soap, right? Old-fashioned soap. You don't need to go like, oh my God, this is the latest product that is costing whatever, You can really go back to basics. And I actually love that, because that means just a couple of ingredients and you just use that at home and it's perfectly fine. So those are a couple of examples. And, I just think that, again, you can do the same for beauty. There are brands out there that are actually affordable, and you should always look into your community. There are always women that, produce things and scrubs and cleansers and things like that. So look around in your community, support your community. There are always options, I believe. I went to this women's lunch the other day, and there were quite a few people that really came from very, very tough backgrounds, and they're now entrepreneurs, and they started very small with, beauty products, and they sell them. And so I think that there are ways that you can access those brands and support women with just, small entrepreneurs.
That's great advice. Great advice. I just want to circle back to your endometriosis story, Anna, and I just want to, from your standpoint, if you could, like you said, know what you didn't know at the time in your 20s, and if you were speaking to a now 20-year-old woman who is in pain every day and searching for those answers, tell me how you would, direct her and give her your support so that she doesn't have to follow the same pain and suffering that you went through to get to where you are today.
Yes. And thank you. And I get phone calls like that, women from Hormone University, or friends of friends, right? That they're like, oh my God, I want to talk to you. What do I do? What do I do? The first thing I always say is make sure you find an excellent professional, a doctor that really has had the experience, especially in surgery. Very important, very, very important. How many people has he actually operated on? And what is that experience that he or she has with endometriosis? So that would be my first advice. Go to a great professional. The holistic perspective is very important to me personally, because I really, we had this conversation earlier. I don't agree that the pill is the solution. And I think you just have to really look at what are you eating, and what does your nutrition look like. Look at also testing, hormone testing, so important. See what your levels of estrogen, testosterone, cortisol, how stressed are you? So I would almost look at myself, right? And think about, what am I doing that might be actually making things worse? And diet is extremely important. Our habits, exercise, huge, right? Breaking a sweat on a daily basis, if possible. Exercise is so important. And I believe that, when we are girls at school or professionals, we sometimes forget about exercise. It's like, okay, I'll put it in the back burner. But I do that too. I'm talking about it, but I do that too. And sleep. Are you getting enough sleep? So there are many lifestyle factors that you should always consider. But I would say get an excellent professional. Unfortunately for endometriosis, at the moment, there is no cure. And the pill is, I was talking to an eminent doctor the other day, Dr. Elizabeth Poyner, and, she was saying there has been studies that the pill can actually change the brain. I mean, how crazy is that? So again, try and avoid anything that's synthetic, pharmaceutical synthetic, and try and see what you can do naturally with your body and get the best expertise, and read a lot at Hormone University.
That's right. That's right. Well, very good, Anna. We like to wrap up interviews with this question, and then we want you to be sure to share with the listeners how they can find more out about you and Hormone University. But what would you tell a young woman about her hormone genius? What do you wish every young girl knew about her hormone genius?
So I would say, don't be embarrassed about what we have, our cycle, our health. Don't be embarrassed. Open the conversation. I think even as women, we tend to judge other women, right? And if someone is not going through pain, they might kind of minimize what you're going through. Yeah. So I would say, no, try and have that conversation and that empathy with other women. I would also say that advocate for yourself. Ask questions all the time. Asking questions is crucial. And then again, try and avoid anything that's not natural, if possible. And read as much as you can. Just educate yourself. It's really, really important.
Awesome. Anna, thank you so much. Teresa.
Yeah, that's just awesome. We're in at least a day and age, even though it's stressful and things are sometimes a little wacky, information is there. And how beautiful it is that we can all go out and read more and educate ourselves, and we can be the advocate of our own hormone genius. Absolutely. And so I'm so glad that you have this Hormone University. I know it will reach 1 million people by 2023. That is amazing. And you will help so many women out there to empower them with this education. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And thank you for being on the Hormone Genius podcast today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And just as a last note, we're rebranding our newsletter and we are calling it The Waiting Room, because that's where we usually read all these magazines, right?
Oh, I love that.
And we want women to read our newsletter before they go to the doctor, right? So that they can inform themselves. Yes. So please subscribe.
Awesome. Do you have social media?
Yes, at Hormone University, all in one word.
All right. Very good, Anna. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. It's a pleasure.